educate, empower, enable, impact. Thank you for tuning in to That Will Never Work podcast, where we share inspiring information and personal experiences related to business and the entrepreneurial journey from those who are leaders in their respective field. Now, here's your host, author and business coach, Maurice.
Thank you very much for tuning in today. I appreciate you tuning in. I have a wonderful guest. He is the author of Mentally Strong Leader. He is the founder and CEO of Profound Performance, a keynote training and coaching company. He is a former Procter & Gamble executive who successfully ran 4 of the company's largest multi-billion-dollar businesses. And he is also the multi-award-winning author of Leading from the Middle, Find the Fire, and Make It Matter. He has been named a CEO Thought Leader by Chief Executives Guild and a Top 50 Leadership Innovator by Inc.com. He is also a faculty on reserve at Indiana University's Kelley School of Business for Executive Education and is a top instructor at LinkedIn Learning. And he also lives in San Diego. And we had a conversation about that a little bit moments ago because to me, today in Philly is dreary. I would love to be in San Diego, a nice, warm, and day. So I thank y'all very much for listening today. And I'll bring down to the stage today, Scott. Scott, thank you very much for coming to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much, Maurice. San Diego also comes with the Sunshine State tax, so it's not free. The weather's not free here, Maurice. I can say that.
So I might want to reconsider my thoughts.
Yeah.
But I appreciate you coming on and sharing your thoughts on being mentally strong. So here's the question, Scott, based off of your book. What are some proven tools that we might need to imply and explore, implement in becoming a mentally strong leader?
Yeah, I think the first thing, it starts with taking an assessment, and I'll let me set that up by explaining first a little bit more, Maurice, about mental strength, so that why the assessment is necessary becomes, it makes sense. So that we're all on the same page. Mental strength it's first of all, it's not EQ. It's not emotional intelligence. A lot of people say, oh, it's the same thing. And in truth, EQ is a slice of the much broader umbrella of mental strength. Mental strength being the ability to regulate not only your emotions, like EQ, but also your thoughts and your behaviors productively. Even in adversity, and I would argue especially in adversity, as I shorthand it, it's how we manage internally, Maurice, so that we can lead externally much better at work and in life. And here's the thing. Most of us know intuitively, Maurice, that if you want to succeed in life, that you have to be able to self-regulate your emotions, your thoughts, and we know that intuitively. But here's the problem, Maurice. I'm going to let you in on a secret, an exclusive for That Will Never Work listeners. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Self-regulating your emotions, your thoughts, and your behaviors is really hard.
Yes, it is.
We know we should do it, but it's really, really hard to do it. Especially when it boils down to the fact that mental strength equates to 6 mental muscles. And now I'm getting back more directly into answering your question. Now, thank you for letting me set that up.
Sure.
The 6 mental muscles that equate to mental strength are confidence, boldness, decision-making, fortitude, goal focus, and messaging, the ability to stay positively minded in your messaging, even when things are not so great and you're facing negativity. And these 6 mental muscles all equate to mental strength. And here's the thing. I want your listeners to think about those mental muscles as if they were their physical muscles, meaning if you wanted to become a bodybuilder, and if you wanted to become really ripped and built, you would go to the gym and you would engage in exercises to become mentally strong or to become physically stronger. Now, Maurice, you wouldn't go to the gym and work on every muscle all the time. It wouldn't work. It'd be a 20-hour workout 7 days a week. You wouldn't stick to it. You would, Wednesday might be back day, Thursday might be leg day, Friday is core day, whatever.
Right.
It's very similar to your mental muscles. And then I'm going to finally answer your question very directly after all this setup.
Okay.
It's very similar to your mental muscles, which is once you understand what your baseline is of your mental strength, you can then develop your own tailored mental strength training program. You have to know what muscles you want to build so that when you go into the gym being my new book, The Mentally Strong Leader, which is equipped with over 50 plus tools to exercise your mental muscles accordingly. Once you understand your baseline, then you know what training program to build. So now to your question, precisely. So what tools do you need to become mentally stronger? And I'll talk about several. The first and maybe the most important one, Maurice, is to assure that you understand your baseline of mental strength. In the Mentally Strong Leader, I have a 50-question self-assessment that you can take.
Okay.
Questions that range across all the mental muscles. And when you're done, it takes you about 15 minutes, and all you have to really do is be honest in answering the questions. And when you're done, it produces a mental strength self-assessment, and you find out which of the 4 tiers of mental strength you fall in. You can be all the way at the top tier, which is only about 6% of us, by the way, which I call the beacon tier, where you're actually so mentally strong, other people are drawn to you because of your mental strength. You could go all the way down to the quote unquote lowest tier, which I just call the novice tier. You're still learning about mental strength and you have a solid baseline. We all have a baseline of mental strength, by the way. The opposite of mentally strong is not mentally weak, but you learn what your score is. And then you also get a score by mental muscle. So you might see, for you, Maurice, for example, we might say, let me ask you, are you a pretty confident guy? If you had to grade yourself from 1 to 10, 10 being most confident, where would you place yourself in confidence?
Let's say 8.
8. So let's say, you took the assessment and the scores showed that, yeah, that's about right. It shows you're a pretty confident guy. But let's say you're like, well, wait a minute, I need to be more decisive or on goal focus. I need to be able to better focus on my goals rather than getting distracted by the 1,000 things. You learn which muscles you're very strong in, which ones you're weak in, and then you can use the book, The Mentally Strong Leader, to go muscle by muscle group and say, okay, I'm going to engage in the exercises in this book that help me build my decision-making and my goal focus. There's lots of tools if I need a tune-up in confidence, but I'm not going to tap into those. Other people might need the boldness tools in the book. Other people might need the fortitude tools in the book. So before I go into some of those specific tools even further, let me pause and make sure this makes sense to you, that the place to start is with an assessment to see where you need to start. Does that make sense to you?
It makes sense, but I think for most people, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Where I could see there could be a fundamental flaw in this idea.
Yeah.
Just follow me for a second. And it's very simple. A lot of us don't like looking in the mirror.
That's right.
So I think because we don't like looking in the mirror, we don't, taking a look at that assessment, everyone may not want to do that. Everyone may not want to hear the feedback, from what their assessment may be, even talking to their manager or whoever it might be. So I think that's why I said follow me for a moment.
I'm with you.
Because I think that's something that a lot of us have a challenge with, is looking at that person in the mirror.
Yeah, Maurice, I don't disagree with you. And I tried to take that into account with mental strength self-assessment in a couple of different ways, which is the language in the assessment is very empowering. And when you discern what tier you fall into, you don't end up taking the assessment and feeling like a loser in any way, shape, or form. Because the way it's written, the language I use, the examples I put in there, I make it very clear that, look, we all have a baseline of mental strength. Some people have it higher than others, but you're not starting from zero here. You're going to start from a place of, you already have a certain level of strengths to build from. So the assessment is about figuring out your strengths to build from, which is a very empowering exercise. Oh, by the way, you can also, if you're willing to, take a look what you need to improve on. And while you say that some people don't want to look in the mirror, and that may be true, all of us like to hear about what we're really good at that we could do more of. We all like to hear that, So there's a lot of that built into the assessment as well. So yeah, excellent point. But I think the assessment becomes an empowering exercise, not a deflating one. So yeah, good. Did you want me to dive into a couple of the specific tools?
You could jump in one or two. Fine.
Yeah. I won't. Yeah, I won't. All right, I'll tell you what. Let me pick one that I get asked about a lot, which is okay. One of the key muscles, is the messaging muscle, which is how do you stay positive minded with your thoughts, even in the face of adversity, especially like how do you keep from losing your cool with someone when you're about to blow? Like the mentally strong people are able to contain themselves and comport themselves in a way that's productive for everybody. So I'm going to give an example of the tool in the book, and we're going to walk through a real live case study. It's called the redirect rhythm. It's a simple couple of steps that you can take so that you can navigate your negative emotions in the moment, Maurice. And we're going to use an example. Let's say, Maurice, let's say I work for you on your podcast. Okay, let's just say I'm an engineer.
Okay,
and I help you make the podcast look and sound great, and I help you with scheduling, and let's say that I haven't been doing a good job lately. There's been some, sound quality issues after you recorded, and I didn't schedule some things right, and you're getting frustrated with me because you've had this talk with me before. So you uncover another mistake I've made, and in that moment, you really want to blow up at me. So the negative emotions are surging. Here's what you do. It's a couple steps, and I promise you it really, really works, Maurice. If your listeners take this on board, it really works. First step, and let's call it 3 steps. The first step is very simple, and it's one that we all intuitively understand that we need to do, but I'm going to tell you why it works. The first thing you do is take a breath, okay? Just in that moment, okay. Breathe in, breathe out slowly. Now, we all intuitively know that, but do you know why it's so powerful, Maurice? That's what I'm going to share with you now. Here's why it's so powerful. Of course, it slows down your heart rate, and it allows you to better focus. But what it's really doing is creating space, meaning it allows you to create distance from the intensity of the emotions that you're feeling. It helps you break the gravitational pull of that emotion that is about to take you someplace that you do not want to be. So by taking a breath, you're breaking that temporary pull. That's the real power of it. Besides it slowing down your heart rate and allowing you to focus before you say something stupid or something that you'll regret. In the next step, in that same instant, you take the breath. As you're releasing your breath, what you want to do at that point, step number 2, is name the emotion. What are you feeling towards me in our example here? So you say to yourself, okay, I'm feeling frustrated. Here's what happens when you name the emotion. You start to distance yourself from that emotion. Maurice, you are not a person who is frustrated all the time. You are feeling frustration in that moment. Because you know what it is now, and you can name it, you can put steps in place to overcome it, which is the final step, where you move right into reassessing and redirecting how you're about to react. You reassess and you say, what's really happening here is that I'm about to lose my cool because I'm frustrated with Scott. That's not going to be productive. So I need to redirect my attention to something more productive. So what's next is, what I'm going to do is explain to Scott with patience. Scott, here's why it's so important that you get the scheduling for these podcasts right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you take a breath to create space. You name the emotion so you can distance yourself from it psychologically and even neurologically. And then you reassess and redirect. And I'm telling you, Maurice, it really, really works. I built it into my own life as a control to stay mentally stronger when things aren't going well, right? Does that make sense?
It makes sense, but here's the thing also, Scott, as I'm listening to you, that means that I need to take accountability for my actions.
Yeah, you do.
And sometimes, again, that's one thing that a lot of times we may not want to, because I might take that breath. And so as I'm listening to you, I'm imagining myself, right? Or other people that have done this, right? And I'm like, wow, like this manager, they might have hyperventilated because they were too excited. Right. But a lot of times people they're so quick to point the finger and not trying to understand, all right, as I take accountability for myself, one, have I totally explained my real expectations from Scott, right?
Yeah,
have I also taken the time to find out today, Scott, how is your day?
Yeah, right.
Because that's another key point of maybe you're distracted. Maybe I have an employee that just had a baby and the baby had them up all night.
That's right. Could happen. It happened. It's real, right? It's
real. So I think there are some things where we got to be accountable, not just for ourselves, but we also need to be accountable for that other individual to a degree. to a degree.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
so I think those are some of the things that we don't always take into account when we see someone making a mistake, a misstep, or whatever it is, of just how accountable we are on both ends of that coin.
Yeah, I think that's right. And, I think it's safe to say that mental strength uh, doesn't come without self-accountability,
Mm-hmm.
Maurice. It's the truth. And the best that I can do, in my book, and I've tried to do this in the Mentally Strong Leader,
Mm-hmm.
is here's how I've tried to help that. I talked before about, we know we need to be mentally stronger. We know we need to
Mm-hmm.
regulate our emotions, thoughts, and behaviors, but it's hard. Some people don't want to look in the mirror. Like you
Right.
said, we don't want to hold ourselves accountable. But what helps is when you develop the habits
Mm-hmm.
so that you don't even have to think about being accountable. You just do the right thing in the right moment. And the way the Mentally Strong Leader book is built is it's built around habit building science,
Mm-hmm.
right? Meaning, so for example, if you want to become mentally strong or physically stronger again, you have to do what? Repetitions of weight.
Right.
Let's say if I want to get biceps, I have to do repetitions. And if you want to become mentally stronger, you have to do repetitions. And those repetitions take the form of systems
Mm-hmm.
and frameworks that help you engage in the right behavior without even thinking about it,
Mm-hmm.
so that it becomes a habit, so that you can overcome that very natural tendency that you're talking about, Maurice, which is we don't like to look in the mirror. But if you don't think about how you're behaving, if it becomes a habit, you don't have to look at yourself in the mirror
Right.
because you're doing the right thing. You're just
Right.
lifting those weights and pulling those muscles to get, bigger arms and bigger mental muscles. So yeah, so I agree with you on that front.
Go ahead. I'm
yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, I was gonna say, do you want me to hit another tool?
Yeah, you
on
can
another
hit another
muscle?
tool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure,
Okay.
go ahead.
So let's see. Why don't I pick? I get asked a lot about the fortitude muscle, and probably maybe even more so. Yeah. Let's go with the fortitude muscle. So, how do you become more resilient, especially in the face of setbacks? And one of the tools I have in the Mentally Strong Leader is, straight from psychology, Maurice. It's what I call the lenses of resilience.
Mm-hmm.
4 classic ways that we can reframe the way we look at setbacks. I won't go through all 4 lenses. I'll just pick one, for example. So let me give you an example. If you've faced a setback, you have a choice in that moment. And, I think psychologists would call this the react versus response lens, which is this. In the face of that setback, you can choose to either react or respond. And they're 2 very different things.
Mm-hmm.
If the idea is to react internally and respond externally. The idea is to manage your emotions, not minimize your emotions. That old adage of check your emotions at the door. It doesn't work, Maurice. It's not realistic.
Right.
We're human beings.
Right.
We have emotions. The problem is as leaders at anything in our life, when we allow those emotions to immediately translate into our reaction, that emotion and we react instantly in the moment, rather than taking a step back and logically analyzing the situation, thinking about, okay, so what's positive about this setback that I could learn from and then I could grow from? What opportunities does it present so that I can then respond intelligently? Quite often, instead, we will react in the moment, and it almost never really produces a good outcome. So you could, I have clients that have actually, I have one client who tattooed on one hand, react, and on the other hand, respond. To remember that I have a choice, and she happens to be right-handed. She always wants to respond. So response is the right approach, not react in the moment. So it's a pretty powerful tool that people go after. One other one I'll throw out that's sort of related. It has to do with a confidence muscle. Then I'll be curious to get reaction to this. Boy, if there's one muscle that the most people have to work on, Maurice, most people aren't like you. They wouldn't rate themselves 8 out of 10 on confidence. They would rate themselves much lower. So this is the muscle that I get the most requests on to help people with. And one of the most important things that I could tell people, there's a tool in the Mentally Strong Leader, lots of tools that help you build your confidence. One in particular, I like to talk about, which is it's important to remember that confidence is not the absence of doubt, Maurice. Confidence is your ability to manage your relationship with doubt, because we all have a relationship with doubt. And I have interviewed thousands of people for the book, The Mentally Strong Leader. And I could tell you, Maurice, with great authority, that even the most confident people would never tell me, oh, yeah, it's just doubt's never present. But they've learned how to manage it. And I have a tool in the book that helps you look at doubt on a kind of a spectrum to help you better manage, to know that the doubt is always going to be there, but how can you better manage that doubt? And I found that to be very powerful and useful for people. Do those tools make sense?
They do make sense. And so I think, as you stated for myself, rating myself 8 out of 10, and it could fluctuate between 7 and 8. But here's my reason. Scott, I have the opportunity to talk to people like yourself.
Yeah.
And so, and I'm using that as an example because we are the sum of the people we eat breakfast with, that breakfast table idea, right?
Right.
So if I'm able to sit here and have an intelligent conversation with you, Scott, who have accomplished many great things, and you start looking at yourself, hey, I belong here, some way, shape, or form. And I have put myself in a position to have this type of conversation, and for you, Scott, to take the time to even feed back into myself.
Yes.
Exactly
Right.
And then have I been able to offer anything back to you in the same vein? So that
Yes.
I think when we're able to, like as you stated, assessing ourselves and understanding, even though we're looking at this piece of paper, what are the true fruits that I've seen in my life on an everyday basis,
Yes.
that has allowed me to say or to agree with myself. Because I'm going to ask myself the question, and say, yes, I have, or no, I have not. So I think for myself, it's the position I've been able to put myself in, and being able to grow over and under and around those moments of doubt.
Yeah, that's very well said. And Maurice, I'd be curious to know, to build on what you said, if you would agree with this. I've also found, and I talk about it in the confidence muscle section of the Mentally Strong Leader, that sometimes we get pulled away from that confidence that we build up for ourselves because of the comparisons that we make to others.
Mhm.
And I want to be very careful here. Comparing to others can be healthy. So, for example, Maurice, let's say if after this, podcast, I already know about you, Maurice, and I know all the things you've done. And let's say I'm comparing to you to say, oh, wow, he does that. That's really cool. I think I could do that. Oh, he does that good. I think I could do that better. That's a relevant comparison. We're peers in some ways. We operate in some of the same areas. That's, that could be a helpful comparison. Where it kills us is when we make comparisons to irrelevant others that have situations different than us, and then it causes us to evaluate ourselves in places that are ridiculous. For example, it happens all the time on social media, right? We will compare our blooper reels to everyone else's highlight reels.
Right.
We don't know anything about that person. We don't know about their context. We don't know that they're probably only presenting the very best view of themselves. And so we make this irrelevant comparison to others that causes us to feel like we're not enough in comparison to. So I talk a lot about, nothing wrong with comparing. Just be really careful about who you're comparing to. And frankly, in my opinion, the most important comparison of all that you should focus on is to who you were yesterday and whether or not you're becoming a better version of yourself, right? What's your thoughts on that? Do you agree with that?
I agree with that because we're supposed to be mentally, right, trying to become better every day. We should be doing at least one thing better than we did yesterday. So for some of us, it might be making up our bed first thing in the morning instead of in the afternoon, whatever it is, just one. And I think that's the challenge that we have. A lot of times we think that the one step has to be a very big or monumental or gigantic step. We're building. We have building blocks. Everyone is not building boulders. Everyone does not have a cornerstone to a building. Some of us might have a Lego block.
That's right. That's right. I like that. That's right.
So I think that's the key that we all have started in the same place. Some of us have had different opportunities because we put ourselves in that place of opportunity. We've been in the right place at the right time. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, hey, make sure that you reach out to Scott because maybe he has an opportunity that you haven't even considered. Just having a conversation. So I think those are the type of things that we don't always practice, is understanding what the opportunities are and who we're surrounding ourselves with. Like I said about the breakfast table, that now has given us that confidence, the opportunity, and so I'm a plug for a lot of you that are out there. I told Scott I had listened to some of his other episodes, right? And Scott, you talk about middle managers
Yeah, I do.
In one episode that I listened to, and I listened to it very extensively because that's my audience.
Yeah.
And as I listen to that, a lot of us don't understand the true value that we really have. So I'm going to go back to the main point that I was going to get to. Understanding our true value in any and every situation. Because we've been devalued for such a long time. We devalue it both on ourselves because we don't think that our voice is valuable enough. What we have to say is valuable enough. And then we have not had a manager that might have been able to pour into us one way or another. And our employees or our other internal customers have not been able to give me that type of feedback, as you stated, that is valuable for me to say, I'm a decent manager. I'm a decent CEO. I'm even just a decent someone that's where we're on the same level, colleague wise. Sometimes we don't get that positive feedback to say, hey, I bring true value to whatever situation I'm in.
Yeah, Maurice, I so agree with that. And to build on that, think about what happens when you don't properly value yourselves.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things we'll do is we'll start to chase approval, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when you chase approval, it's a soul-sucking endeavor,
Right.
and it's a temporary win at best because there's always another person's approval to chase. And when we chase approval, we become farther and farther away from our true selves. We feel like we need that external validation because we're not valuing ourselves enough. We need approval from everyone else. And one of the most common pieces of advice that I give to people is to stop chasing approval. Start chasing authenticity. Get back to the value of who you are. Chase authenticity, not approval. So that's my way of vehemently agreeing with you, Mark.
Well, Scott, I appreciate you coming on the show. So one last thing. I'm an individual who has not understood my voice. I have not understood my place, and I don't really understand what the word authenticity means for me.
Yeah.
So, Scott, where can I reach out to you and find your book? Where can I find your website so that way I can possibly take these assessments to find out who I truly am in whatever position that I'm in?
Yeah, great. Couple things, and I have a gift lined up for your listeners as well today. So first of all, if you want to learn more about my book, The Mentally Strong Leader, and the keynotes I give on that topic and all the books and keynotes that I give, just go to scottmautz.com, SCOTTMAUTZ.com. And I have a gift lined up. If your listeners are interested in a free 60-page PDF that they download, I'll tell you how to get it. But first, let me tell you what it is. I'm going to give away the assessment for free because I think it's so important. And Maurice, you are right. Some people do not want to look in the mirror. I want to do everything I can to make it easier for you to do that.
Right.
So I'm going to give away the assessment to your listeners for free. It's the 50-question self-assessment that allows you to get a score by mental, muscle, and overall. And then it gives you prompts for how to get the best out of the book and the tools, The Mentally Strong Leader. And if you want that 60-page free PDF to download, just go to scottmautz.com/mentally strong gift, and you can get that right away.
Cool, Scott. So I'll make sure that all this information will be listed into the show notes. So that way, please, if you're struggling with this, and even if you feel as though you are an 8 in confidence, I'm pretty sure this assessment can get you to a 10 or close enough to it. But Scott, thank you very much for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Maurice, and I appreciate you and all you do. And you know what? While the podcast may be named, That'll Never Work, this podcast really works for me and your listeners. I know that. So thanks for having me on.
Oh, sure, no problem, Scott. Thank you for that. So of course, I got to ask you the world famous question before we sign all the way off, Scott. So, Scott, my would you rather question: would you rather choose 3 doors or a fork in the road?
That one's easy for me. I knew it was coming. I'd rather choose the fork in the road because the fork in the road requires strength. It requires a choice. It requires internal reflection to say, I can go this way or I can go that way. And it forces you to truly assess what is the inflection point I'm at in my life right now. And I do that in my life. I'm every 5 years or so, Maurice, I say, am I at a fork in the road? Which path should I take? So for me, that's the how I lead down the path to becoming mentally stronger and more happy in my life.
Wow, I appreciate that, Scott. A lot of us, again, you keep looking in the mirror, Scott. A lot of us don't like it.
That's right. I like to.
But Scott, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, Morris.
And thank y'all very much for listening to That Will Never Work podcast, and I will talk to you a little later.
Thanks for listening. Find us on social media at Chisholm Group LLC and check back weekly for new episodes. Until next time, that will never work, or will it?